One thing I do want to show you, actually, I have a link here in the notes. There are a lot of stages. So I showed you bucket. I showed you can do count, match. I showed you match. I showed you sort. There's project. There's redact, replace with, sample. Also, like, there's a lot of different stuff you can do with the aggregation pipeline. How do you query buckets once you've gone through the aggregation pipeline? I mean, what you get back is an array of objects, and you can kind of treat those as you would basically documents otherwise in your collection. Beyond that, I'd have to go look at exactly how you do it, because I don't remember off the top of my head. Every time that I do the aggregation pipeline stuff, I have to go and read the docs line by line, because it's not something that I end up doing very frequently. But it's not terribly difficult. You just end up querying them like normal objects. There's nothing special that you need to treat them. In fact, you can see here, I did literally query them right here. With the sort, I just said, hey, sort this and count by -1. You could bucket these again by saying, here's all of the ones that have more than 800, and here's all the ones that have less than 800. It's all just objects to MongoDB. That's a good question. Are the buckets saved or indexed or anything like that? Not by default. By default, it's just going to print out what you ask it to print out. It does have the ability to actually write to another collection. So let's say you were doing like daily stats on how many people visited your websites, right? And you were keeping all of your sessions in a database. One, that's not really a good use case for MongoDB, but you could. It's potentially, the software exists to do that. And then at the end of the day, you wanted to aggregate that into like how many Firefox users visited and how many Chrome users and Edge users and all that kind of stuff. You could do that with the aggregation pipeline, and then you could have that write to another like daily stats collection, and then you could read from that collection every day, right? So by default, it doesn't save anywhere, but you could write that to another collection. Obviously, that's not going to be indexed by default either, but there's no reason you couldn't index that as well. Michael C. asks, is there any documentation we can go explore? I left a link to it in the course notes. It's on the aggregation page at the bottom. I'm sure Front-End Masters will also put a course note here. Actually, I don't know where they'll put it.
The object IDs are randomly generated, or is there any serial order for that?
That's a good question. Are the let's see if I can find one in here. Yeah, like these object IDs right here. I don't actually really know precisely the algorithm that goes into it. The one thing that I do know is it actually does contain a timestamp in it. So it is based on the time when it was written. You can actually pull the timestamp out of it. You'd have to go look it up. So if you just search for like Mongo ID timestamp, it'll contain the creation time in it. So you can actually, if you're looking at creation times, just know that the object ID automatically contains that whether or not you create it or not. That's the only interesting thing I can remember about it. And the other thing is it's always guaranteed unique. But the randomization is through the time. Even if two objects are inserted relatively close to each other in time, they will never have the same ID. This object ID here, 100% of the time, will always be totally unique to that object. Good question.